The slam of the front door echoed like a gunshot through the quiet Texas suburb that warm summer night. "You're no son of mine, you disgusting little faggot," his father bellowed from behind the locked screen, the words slicing deeper than any physical blow ever could. At 14, Hector Ramirez stood frozen on the porch, duffel bag clutched in trembling hands, the humid air thick with the scent of freshly cut grass and the sudden, crushing weight of abandonment. His mother's silhouette hovered just inside, silent, her face turned away as if the sight of him burned her eyes. No goodbye. No explanation beyond the crumpled note his older brother had found in his backpack weeks earlier. A private journal entry confessing feelings for the boy who sat 2 rows ahead in algebra. That single page had unraveled everything. Hector wiped his tears with the back of his hand and stepped into the darkness, the suburban streetlights blurring into streaks. Chicago was a distant dream, but the bus station was only 3 miles away, and he had $43 in his pocket from mowing lawns. Every step felt like walking away from the only life he had known. Saturday barbecues, his father's proud slap on the back after Little League games, his mother's homemade tamales on birthdays. Now it was all poison. By midnight, he was on a Greyhound bound north, the engine's rumble the only sound keeping him from shattering completely. The city swallowed him whole. Chicago streets in 2014 were unforgiving to a skinny kid with no ID and a story no one wanted to hear. He slept in alleys the first 2 nights, waking to the cold bite of concrete and the distant wail of sirens. Hunger gnawed constantly. On the 3rd morning, a kind woman at a shelter on Halsted Street handed him a warm blanket and a clipboard. "You're safe here, honey," she said, her voice soft like his mother's used to be before everything broke. The shelter was full of other boys like him. Runaways, throwaways, kids whose families had chosen shame over love. Hector kept his head down, ate the watery oatmeal they served, and tried not to think about the future that now stretched out like an empty highway. School became a distant memory. He lied about his age to get a dishwashing job at a diner near the shelter, scrubbing plates until his hands cracked and bled. Nights were the worst. Alone in the bunk, he replayed his father's words on an endless loop, wondering if he really was disgusting, if the flutter he felt when he thought about boys proved his family right. Doubt clawed at him, but so did a stubborn spark of defiance. He was still breathing. That had to count for something. By the end of the first month, he had saved enough for a cheap room in a boarding house run by an older gay man named Mr. Ellis, who never asked questions but left extra sandwiches on the counter when he thought Hector wasn't looking. It wasn't home. It was survival. And for now, survival was enough. Winter in Chicago hit like a freight train, and Hector learned quickly that survival meant adaptation. He enrolled in night classes at a community center using a fake address, determined not to let his education die along with his family ties. The other students were older, tougher, but no one cared that he was gay once he kept his mouth shut and his head in the books. Geometry made sense in a way his life no longer did. Angles and proofs offered the certainty his father's rage had stolen. One evening after class, he met Marcus, a loud, confident 19-year-old who worked at the center's front desk. Marcus took one look at Hector's threadbare coat and dragged him to a thrift store, buying him a proper winter jacket with his own paycheck. "Nobody freezes on my watch," Marcus declared. Their friendship bloomed fast. Late-night talks about music, shared pizza slices, the kind of easy camaraderie Hector had never known with his own brother. For the first time, he felt seen without judgment. Marcus even introduced him to the local LGBTQ youth group, where Hector listened more than he spoke, absorbing stories of others who had walked the same lonely road. Money remained tight. He added a weekend job stocking shelves at a corner market, stacking boxes until his back ached. The work left little time for dreams, but dreams refused to die. He started sketching house designs on napkins during breaks, imagining homes where no child ever had to stand on a porch with a slammed door behind them. The drawings were rough, but they gave him purpose. Then came the letter. His mother's handwriting on the envelope nearly stopped his heart. Inside was a single sentence. "I'm sorry. Please come home. No return address." Hector stared at it for hours, the paper trembling in his grip. Part of him wanted to run back, to forgive everything if it meant sleeping in his old bed again. But another part, the part that had survived Chicago winters and diner grease and nights so dark he thought he might disappear, knew better. Going back now would mean erasing the boy who had learned to stand on his own. He tore the letter into tiny pieces and let the wind carry them off the fire escape. Forgiveness, he decided, would have to be earned. By spring he had saved enough to enroll in a GED program. The day he passed the test, Marcus threw him a tiny party with store-bought cake and paper hats. Hector blew out the single candle and made a silent wish that one day he would build something permanent, something no one could slam a door on. The wish felt fragile, but it was his. College was a long shot, but Hector applied anyway, scraping together application fees from overtime shifts. When the acceptance letter from the University of Illinois arrived, he cried in the boarding house bathroom for 20 minutes straight. Student loans and a part-time job in the campus library kept him afloat. The campus was a different world. Open, loud, full of kids who wore their identities like badges instead of scars. Hector still kept his head down, but slowly he began to lift it. That was where he met Josiah. Josiah was a junior studying social work, tall and steady with light brown hair that always looked windblown even indoors. He volunteered at the same youth center Hector had once slept in. Their first conversation happened over a broken coffee machine in the library basement. "You look like you could use a real cup," Josiah said, handing over a thermos. They talked until closing, about everything and nothing. Favorite movies, worst bosses, the way Chicago smelled after rain. Josiah never pushed, never pried. He simply listened, and in that listening Hector felt the first cracks in the armor he had built around his heart. Their friendship deepened over months. Josiah invited him to quiet study sessions that turned into long walks along the lake. One night, under a sky heavy with stars, Josiah admitted his own story. Kicked out at 16, bounced between foster homes, now determined to help kids like the ones he used to be. Hector told him everything that night. The slammed door, the letter, the nights he still woke up tasting fear. Josiah didn't offer empty comfort. He simply took Hector's hand and said, "You survived. That's not nothing. That's everything." The relationship grew carefully, like spring bulbs pushing through frozen ground. Hand-holding turned to shared dinners to quiet kisses on Josiah's worn couch. There were no fireworks, only the steady warmth of someone choosing him every single day. For the first time, Hector allowed himself to imagine a future that included love without shame. Yet old fears lingered. When Josiah suggested meeting his own accepting parents, Hector panicked and canceled. The thought of another family's judgment, even kind judgment, felt like standing on that porch again. Graduation day arrived under a sky the color of new denim. Hector walked across the stage in a borrowed cap and gown, diploma in hand, Josiah cheering louder than anyone in the crowd. With his degree in architecture, he landed an entry-level job at a small firm specializing in affordable housing. The work felt like redemption, designing homes where families could stay whole. He and Josiah moved into a tiny apartment above a bakery, the smell of fresh bread greeting them every morning. Life settled into a rhythm of early coffees, late-night sketches, and weekends volunteering back at the youth center. Then the betrayal came from the last place Hector expected. His brother Diego showed up at the firm one afternoon, dressed in a cheap suit, claiming he wanted to make things right. Diego had tracked him through social media and now worked in the same city. At first Hector believed the apology. They met for beers, shared awkward laughs about old neighborhood stories. Josiah warned him to go slow, but Hector wanted so badly to believe blood could still mean something. The betrayal hit like the original slam of the door. Diego had been feeding information to their father about Hector's lifestyle, hoping to secure a loan from the old man for his own failing business. When Hector confronted him, Diego shrugged. "Dad was going to find out anyway. You brought this on yourself." The words reopened every scar. Hector spent 3 days on the couch, staring at the ceiling, Josiah bringing soup and silence in equal measure. Josiah's steady presence pulled him through. "You don't owe them your pain anymore," he said one night, holding Hector close. "You built this life. Keep building it." Hector returned to work with a new fire. He poured everything into a project redesigning transitional housing for LGBTQ youth. The firm noticed. Within a year, he earned a promotion and a small bonus. The money wasn't much, but it planted a seed, an idea that would one day bring him full circle. The call came on a rainy Tuesday. His mother's voice, older and thinner, cracked over the line. "Your father passed last month. The house, we're losing it. Foreclosure." I didn't know who else to call. Hector listened, chest tight, the old porch flashing behind his eyes. He hung up and stared at Josiah across the kitchen table. "I have to go back," he said. Josiah nodded without hesitation. "Then we go together." The drive to Texas felt endless. Hector gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened, replaying every memory. Josiah sat quietly in the passenger seat, offering a hand when the silence grew too heavy. They arrived at dusk, the same suburban street unchanged except for the foreclosure sign stabbed into the lawn like a wound. His mother opened the door before they knocked, eyes red-rimmed. She looked smaller, older. "Hector," she whispered. He stepped inside, the familiar smell of lemon cleaner hitting him like a wave. The next days were a minefield of half-spoken apologies and old resentments. His mother admitted she had known for years but stayed silent out of fear. Diego had disappeared after the funeral, leaving her to face the bank alone. Hector spent hours in his childhood bedroom, now stripped of posters and trophies, touching the walls as if they might still hold answers. Josiah stayed in a nearby motel, giving space but always a phone call away. One afternoon Hector found the deed in his father's old desk. The house was underwater, but Hector's promotion and years of careful saving had given him options. He met with the bank, crunched numbers late into the night, and made an offer. When the papers were signed, the loan officer handed him a single brass key. "It's yours now," she said. Hector closed his fist around it, the metal warm from his palm. 10 years of running had circled back to the very door that had once shut him out. The morning Hector turned the key in the lock, sunlight poured through the same windows that had once framed his exile. His mother stood in the kitchen, tears streaming as she watched him step across the threshold not as a boy thrown away, but as the man who had chosen to come back on his own terms. Josiah waited on the porch, giving them the moment. Inside, Hector walked room by room, touching doorframes he had helped his father build years ago. The anger was still there, quiet but present, yet it no longer controlled him. His mother reached for him first. "I was wrong," she said simply. "Every day I was wrong." Hector pulled her into a hug that felt like releasing a breath he had held for a decade. They talked for hours, about the fear that had paralyzed her, the shame she carried, the pride she had never been allowed to voice. Diego's betrayal hung between them, but they chose not to let it define the future. Forgiveness wasn't erasure. It was a door left open instead of slammed shut. That evening Josiah joined them for dinner. Watching his partner laugh with his mother over tamales, Hector felt the last piece click into place. Later, on the same porch where it had all begun, he and Josiah stood under a sky full of stars. Josiah slipped an arm around his waist. "You did it," he whispered. Hector leaned into the embrace, the brass key still in his pocket like a talisman. The house was his now, not as revenge, but as proof that love could rebuild what hate had tried to destroy. True or false? No matter how deep the rejection, a family that once turned its back on a gay son can still be redeemed if the son chooses to hand them the key.